Hello and welcome to 19 O'Clock News, a Kodocha podcast. My name is Mahou Shoujo M, and I am joined by my co-host.
That Kodocha Girl, and we have a special guest today, Lee.
Woohoo! Welcome back.
Hello.
So excited to have Lee back. We were talking about it before we started recording, and it's been almost a year and a half since we've had Lee on the podcast. So, especially given today's topic, it felt appropriate to bring her back. So we're excited to have you. Thank you for making the time for us.
Yeah,
Thank you
definitely.
for the second invite. I am always so joyful and happy to be talking about my favorite show ever, and my favorite character is in both. So let's chime into it. Why not?
Oh, I love it. So today we are going to talk about episode 21, which is Look Out, a mini Hayama, and its corresponding manga chapter, which isn't like a full chapter. And so it felt appropriate to talk about that episode because we visit the Kamura Academy with our boy Naozumi. So it felt like a good opportunity to bring in the resident Naozumi expert of the internet.
When you say it like that, it makes me feel so honored.
You kind of are the president of the Naozumi fan club, though. Let's be real. Thanks.
Yes.
Doing all of the work. So yeah. So with the episode, I did take a couple of notes on some interesting things that I picked up on as we went. So we have the beginning of the episode in which Sana is already dressed up like a pig wearing a tutu for presumably child's toy taping. Do you guys
That
disagree or
part
do
is
you?
so funny.
I
I
think,
know.
yeah, I think it was either that or a commercial. I don't think
Yeah,
they
I
were
think
like
most likely a
clear about
commercial,
that.
yeah.
I always just wonder because Zenjiro and Hiroshi were there, and stuff. But I part of me wondered if it was just regular old child's toy because she was so comfortable skipping it. For those who haven't watched the episode recently, she gets a phone call from Naozumi, inviting her to come with him to the Camera Academy that day, to visit, and she kind of drops everything including work, and says yes. And so then we have a very fun little drive up to the Camera Academy. My first note I wrote was just like, poor Maeda, Naozumi's manager, who is kind of abused in the anime anyway, but he was kind of like ignored completely in this episode. I don't know if they decided what they were going to do with him yet as a character. What do y'all think?
Yeah, he doesn't really become relevant to me until the second season, I don't think. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot
Mm,
of the gags or the interactions usually happen in season two with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I think it's kind of when things probably when they go film Mansion of Water. That's when he kind of becomes more of a foreground character. But I felt like he was relegated to basically scenery in this episode.
Yeah.
in all honesty, I hadn't even realized that he was in there aside from the car ride. Like, did it
Yeah,
disappear after he drove them there?
pretty much. He was like, "I will come pick you up later," and everybody said thank you, and that's that. So it's like, I don't know. I just thought it was odd, I guess. But you guys know I have a bit of an attachment to background characters as it is. So
There
take it all
was
with a grain of salt.
there was one interesting thing I noticed when they dropped them off. There was actually an error where
Yes.
Naozumi's eyes were brown instead of blue.
Yes, I saw that too.
Me
As the car was
too.
driving off. That was a little uncanny valley. Like it was kind of spooky.
Hmm.
I
Overall, I
don't
feel like that episode was like the quality wise, it wasn't the best. Because when you see the panels of them on like when Santa leaves the set dressed as a pig, I feel like the budget overall for that part of the episode wasn't as good in itself. Because the
mm,
Santa's eyes, the brown part takes all over her face, and her eyes look so big that it's
hmm
kind of what's happening here, and then the scene of them looking back and forth to each
hmm
other in the car, and it's like, what happened here? Is this episode that kind of episode? I was just like, wow, because I hadn't rewatched that episode in like a year or two. So
hmm
when I go back to it, I'm like, wait, this is kind of this is kind of not given.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how much reused recycled animation there was in this episode. Like even
Hmm.
good example during that car ride, with the car like bumping and spinning and going up and down the hills and stuff. That is straight from the first episode.
Yeah,
Hmm.
episode one,
Um,
that's right.
and I think that's reused again in episode two, maybe also with Ray driving crazy. But like in any case, it's yeah, I was really surprised. Because I always when I think about recycled animation, I tend to think of like the second season, because they do so much of the recoloring in the New
Mm.
York arc specifically and in other places. But yeah, episode 21, our sweet animators overworked, underpaid, and doing their best, I guess.
Doing their best. But
It was
even
still a good
still,
episode, though.
Hmm.
yes. Even then, like the voice acting, the planning, the idea, the way it was developed, it was so sweet. Because I remember, like,
Hmm.
my favorite part of the episode is the car ride when Sana and
Mm.
Naotomi are talking, and he asks her, oh, well, no, he doesn't ask her, but he says, oh, I saw that you met your mom, like your biological mom. And she's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I did. And he goes, oh, so that means that your mom has been watching over you, reading your, well, Misako's books and seeing your acts. And I thought it was so adorable. And the way he just
Mm.
spoke about it. And Sana is like, yeah. And then she asks him back, don't you want to meet your parents too, your biological parents? And he's like, nah, I have a family already. I do not want to seek for people who like left me or others. And I'm like, oh my God, that was me.
He's so sweet.
A sweet baby boy. Yeah.
It's so cute. And then Sana is she also got so shy here. I was like, Sana, is
Mm.
me and you feeling the same thing? Because she was remembering what Naotomi did for her when her mom's book came out. So she's like,
Hmm.
I want to thank him, but I don't know how. Like, I don't want to sound too high and mighty or I don't know, like kind of like she's pressing on it. So she's like, "Ah, how do I tell him thank you without being too, I don't know, too high about it?" And she blushes to her core, and I'm like, that's me. That's me, Sana. I feel you.
I love it. I liked that moment too because I don't think it was put exactly this way in the Japanese version, but I gave the dub a watch as well, the English dub, and I think the line there was, it's not often that I'm at a loss for words, and I thought that that was pretty apt because Sana generally
Ooh,
has something to say. I would
definitely.
say just about all of the time. So it made sense that, when she's got these kind of like bubbling emotions that she's not really sure what to do with, that it would be hard to
Mm,
kind of put into words that she is thankful and yet doesn't want to make things awkward, which I think kind of goes back to a conversation we have about Sana pretty regularly, which is that like not all the time, of course, but sometimes she kind of, because she wants to keep things kind of light and happy, she'll kind of run from those difficult conversations or hard emotions. And I think that this is one of those
yes.
times where she kind of does that a little bit.
Definitely. And throughout the episode, she does so too. Because she gets into a sentimental, like a slightly sentimental mood where she says,
Hmm.
oh, I feel like I don't know this place at all, but I sense like a hint of familiarity to it. And when she
Hmm.
meets the kids and she's all surrounded in this environment, she's like, she doesn't know how to act around them because she's like, I don't know these guys. I don't know these people, but I know I have history in here. So she's like,
Hmm.
acting all goofy and all silly. And then she meets the D3 Santas, which is so cute. I'm like, oh my God, that's actually so adorable. And she's like goofing around and being funny, but at the same time, she looks so shy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but because to me, there's a big difference between like kind of performing and then being the center of attention in a room where you're interacting with a lot of people,
Hmm.
especially new people for the first time. I'd have broken out in hives if it was me. Like,
Oh, I totally can relate to that as someone who did a lot of performing when I was a teenager.
mhm,
And I'm very much an introvert, as still am. And I was even worse back then. So it was like I could go and be with people that I don't know not performing and I'm just absolutely quiet. But if I get on
Mm.
stage, like I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
totally cool.
Different
Um,
skill set. Yeah.
and it's funny
Definitely.
because I actually when I worked my last job, so my last job that I had, I kind of had to incorporate that performer part of me.
Hmm.
And I ended up going to a coworker's house, and her whole family was there because she was actually going to give me my wedding dress. And she's like, "You're like a completely different person. You're so bubbly and outgoing at work. Like, why are you so quiet?" I'm like, I'm shy and I'm around people I don't know.
Hmm.
What am I supposed to say?"
Yes,
Truly.
you're so used to giving people a specific image of you, and then when they see another part of you that they don't know, they're like, "Who is you? What is going on here?"
Mm.
Yep.
That's oh, are we getting deep here on 19 o'clock news, a Kadocha podcast?
But
I love
hey,
it.
applying it to Sana, I think it works too, because she's always
Hmm.
bubbly around everyone. It was only in episode, I'm not sure, but it's the episode before her mom books came out that she goes on a trip with the guys. That Akito
Hmm.
sees her smile is falling. She has a straight
Hmm.
face, and that's like one of the only moments in where she drops the facade and actually shows her emotions. But even then, no one but Akito realizes.
Hmm. Exactly. Which I love. That's I think episode 16, maybe Promise Summer Part 2.
Mm.
And yeah, no, exactly. Like he's yeah, check on your extroverted friends, everybody. Like,
Definitely.
just because they're bubbly a lot of the time doesn't mean that there's not other things going on for them. So yeah, I loved that moment too. That episode is also one of my favorites. So it was fun. But
100%.
this episode, you did mention the three little girls who wanted to be like Sana, and I did want to mention a little Japanese versus English moment that made me giggle, which was in the English version, they go like, I'm Yui, I can't remember the first one's name. And then
I think it's
the
Mayumi.
something like that. And then the third girl goes like, I'm Nami Amuro. And then they hit her with the hammer and she goes, I'm a Yumi. But in the English version, they were like, oh, people are not going to be familiar with mid 90s Japanese pop stars. So we're going to change it to just star of the show.
You
So
know,
I thought that was funny.
yeah, they actually had, I wrote it down too because they do it twice.
Hmm.
They do it once at the beginning when she gets to
Hmm.
the academy, and then they do it again. And
Hmm.
she says a different name the second
Yeah.
time.
She says a
And
different pop star. I didn't write down that one, but I knew who Nami Amuro was, which is why I thought it was funny.
and
Um,
it was frustrating because I wrote it down because I'm like, I'm gonna look up and see who that is. And I couldn't find anything just by Googling that name. So I feel like I'd have
mhm.
to maybe search in other places.
Yeah.
But it was Suhiro Ruriko. So if anybody knows who that is, comment below, or if you do some research, let us know because I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Educate us, yeah.
Well, I'm okay. Well, something that I noticed just now is I had chalked the first one up to a typo because in the discotheque version, it's supposed to be Nami Amuro, but they spell it Ami Namuro. So part of me wonders if they changed it slightly for like copyright reasons or like not wanting to get in
Hmm.
trouble for using the name without permission. So Suhiro Ruriko could be like a close but not the exact same name. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so I'm wondering if it's that. So I might do a little digging and see if that is the case for both of them. Because yeah, for Nami Amuro, I was just like, oh, they just like they goofed. There are 102 episodes. There are 51 in the first season alone. Like I wasn't gonna hold it against them. I just thought they messed up their subtitles, but that could be the joke. I might go back and listen to that again just to see. But in any case, those girlies were very funny and cute, and I thought that was
It,
a nice little addition to the episode.
it was
Yes.
adorable. And it's funny because I have never, like, I promise you, I have never seen the English dub because I tried watching episode one, but compared to the
Hmm.
Japanese, I was like, it's so good, but it's just not hitting it for me. So I didn't
Hmm.
even know this little fact. And those who haven't, or perhaps are starting to watch the series and haven't gotten here yet, when they get to this episode, they may see the artist names in the English dub, and they be like, "Oh, I know who this is." Or, "Oh, I remember hearing this in the podcast. Let me Google this person up." It's just gonna be so funny.
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. I'm sure you've noticed also in our server just which people have a preference for the Japanese version versus the English version, and a lot of Americans have a very strong preference for the English dub. I often
Mm.
feel quite alone in my preference for the Japanese because I'm with you. I think they really nailed it. It does worry is probably too strong of a word, but when people are experiencing the show for the first time and they choose to watch dub or they don't have any intention to watch the Japanese version, I do worry that they will miss some things
Mm-hmm.
just because of ways that the English dub made decisions. And it wasn't an exact localization, if that makes sense. But
Yes.
people can do what they want, I guess.
I think I think I still prefer the English dub, but I'm starting to enjoy the Japanese version better, if that makes any
Mm,
sense. Like it's starting to grow on me a lot more.
okay.
Not that I never disliked it. Like I always liked it, but I liked the English dub just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But, since we've been doing the podcast and I've been taking the time to watch those episodes in Japanese more, and we had, season two come out with the new subs, and I think that voice cast is starting to grow on me, and I'm starting to see like, it was kind of weird that Akito had the voice of a 20-year-old man.
Oh, sweet Jerry. Yeah, I remember that was because like Laura Bailey, pretty much the entire English cast, like everybody did a great job and I had no issues with them. And like I will say, I am obsessed with Jerry Jewell in just about every other show that he's in. I think he really nails it. And I think if Kodocha was like a high school show, it would probably be fine. But because it's an elementary school, middle school, it's just not it's a little deep.
Yeah.
It's a little deep, you know.
And
And
I
what I
have to
like about the
wonder.
Japanese dub too is that Akito's voice actor, even though I'm not sure if this was on purpose, but his voice throughout the anime changes because his voice
Mhm.
actor changes. So when you first start the anime on season one, you hear Akito's voice is more childish, but then as the story moves on, his voice gets deeper due to the
Mhm.
change of voice actors. And for some reason, that makes you feel like you've grown up with him. And
Mhm.
it's so sweet. Sana's voice also, well, she stays pretty consistent throughout the show, but
Mhm.
in a sense of a way, you feel it change perhaps because you see the changes in her.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think by the time we're into season two, like there's definitely a shift in like what the comedy of the show is a little different. I feel like there's like less raps, and less music generally.
Less
Mm-hmm.
Um,
gadgets.
yeah, less gadgets. It's a little bit more mature. So she's still, talking as fast as she can and, energetic and stuff, but it does have a different energy. I think you're right.
Yeah, perhaps a little bit lower, a little bit softer, because she goes
Hmm.
from giggling super loudly and you can hear all across the place to just a soft giggle that is like, and it's like, Senna,
Hmm.
your changes. And I feel that it happens even more, that you notice it even more after the recording in the mountains episode. When her
Mm.
eyes go all null and lifeless, I think that's one of the main moments in where you see the shift. It's just so it's so good.
It really is. Everybody's developed, I think, really well, particularly over the course of the manga. I think people are developed like super well. And
Yep.
Oh
so
yeah.
it's nice to see everybody grow up a little bit. Then, we're at the Kamura Academy and we get to meet Kochan, who's
Oh boy.
the mini Hayama in question. Um,
He was funny. I
you,
loved him.
oh my gosh, yes, I got a kick out of that. And also just Sana's like complete determination to, kind of try to take him down a peg. Um, was also really funny to me. But I guess at that, it's something I noticed too, and especially because we've been talking about the music of Kodocha a lot on the podcast lately, was that they use a lot of Akito's background music for Ko, which I thought was really funny. Did you guys notice that also,
Hmm.
I actually
or
had
care?
not.
I think it was in the Mondo. I think they used maybe can't remember off the top of my head, or maybe Rasta Hayama. I can't remember. One of those they used for Koji scenes, which I thought was fun. But that
That's
intro
pretty fun.
and the introduction to the rest of the Camera Academy kids and stuff, and oh, this is the principal. She's kind of like our mom, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
I got such a kick out of that. Kasana was like, "Oh, this is great. So we're all like siblings then." And she like turns to Naozumi and she's like, "So you're like my brother." And he's like, no,
Oh,
God,
I
no,
see
no,
us as
stop
so
it,
much
no."
more than that.
I got such a kick out of that. And then she's completely not listening to him. He tries to confess his love like what 3 times this episode.
Yeah,
Blessed sweet boy. Just
it's so adorable. And how
it
all the kids
is.
surround them, and then now Sumi sees all the mess that the kids are doing around Santa, and he points to the mother, and he's like, "You're not gonna do anything, or is this all you have to say?" He says that in the
Yes.
dub version all the time in
Hmm.
the sub part. Is this all you? Is this all you're going to say? Is this all you're going to say? And she's just chilling, looking at the cows develop.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I love it too. She's like, "Oh, sorry for all of the hullabaloo. Oh, sorry for all the commotion." He's like,
Why do you keep saying that?
yeah, that tickled me. It
Definitely.
did.
And I feel like it's sweet too. The way that she's just so calm about this, like, oh yeah, my kiddos are messy, but they're my kiddos. And how Naomi goes to her all the time, like, Mom, are you seeing this? Why are you allowing this? It's so funny. Like he actually looks at her like, is this all you're going to say? Like, why don't you reprimand them? Like, he's definitely
Mhm.
acting like a sibling. And I feel like that is one of the cutest things ever.
Just another day at Kamura Academy.
Pretty much. I think when you've got like if you are the sole adult in charge of like a certain number of kids, there it does reach a certain point where you're just sort of like it is what it is. As long as
Yeah.
everybody's like alive and accounted for at the end of the day, they're probably fine. Um, so I yeah, I just thought that was humorous. But I love that, Sana got to have a moment with her to look at, the photo album and kind of hear a little bit about Naozumi as a baby and as a little toddler. I love
That's
that
probably
Yeah.
my
scene.
favorite part of that episode.
Yeah.
Me too.
That
And
was
then
actually
in
in
the
the
manga
manga
too.
too. Hmm.
Yes, it's this part in specific where she's showing him the baby pictures, and then they move on. In the manga, they are in another room by then, but then Sana goes and tells him something, and now also me points at her and looks at the mother. I'm just gonna keep calling her mother, and he's like, "What did you tell her?" And she's just bursts out laughing, and it's so cute.
Yes. I love that moment too. I also like the part where Sana, says like thank you for watching me for a month when I was a baby. I thought that was sweet. She's so
Definitely.
considerate. The next thing I had on my list was kind of another translation note, which is Koji Kochan calls Sana Obasan, which can mean grandmother. It can like Oba-san can be grandmother. Oba-san is kind of like auntie. Or like you would use it probably for just like women in your life, like family, friends, things like that. or for like biological ants. But if it's
Yeah, like
if you
older
use it,
people.
yeah, but if you use it for somebody who's like very young or like it's kind of tone dependent. It can, just sort of be like old lady or like old hag is typically how it gets translated in the US, which I don't think is super far off because it is kind of all context dependent on if you're using Obasan as a nice thing or as a mean thing, and he clearly means it as a mean thing. So in the dub, they translated it as old hag, which I thought was interesting. But in the discotheque subtitles for the Japanese version, they had it as just auntie. So there you go. A thought.
Honestly, that's definitely
Yes.
a translation thing. I hadn't like when they translated it into the one that I saw, it was just like
Mm-hmm.
that, like old lady, or they
Mm-hmm.
directly just put the Japanese words for Obasan. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was so funny. Like she's not even 15 yet.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that the phrase is so context dependent, I think. Because like you can use it respectfully and it can apply in a lot of social situations, but I feel like typically when it's being used in anime, it's almost always meant to be a not nice thing. So, and it's typically characters who are like less polite or who don't use polite speech that use it. So there you go.
Yeah, because I
That's
see it happening in other situations too. Like that's the most basic quote insult that they give to older ones so that they feel. I'm not
hmm
even sure what the intention is behind it. It's just so funny.
hmm Yes, I agree. It is humorous. But yeah, I did think it was funny. Sana's just like, kind of just frustrated at being called an old hag, which does tickle me. It reminded me a little bit of Tokyo Mew Mew. One of the aliens, Tart, calls the main character Mew Ichigo um, Obasan, old hag, throughout the series, which, she does not like. So just
I
funny.
wonder if I've never seen the Japanese dub of Pokemon, but I specifically
Mm.
remember that sometimes that they would call Jessie a hag when they were really mad at her.
Mm.
And I wonder in the Japanese version, are they saying that?
I, not a bad question. I don't know. Oh,
Something worth looking into.
for sure. For sure. Do you guys have any notes? I was gonna talk about Naozumi's second attempt to confess his love when Tsuyoshi and Akito are there to watch, because that whole scene just had me laughing out loud. Bless his heart.
Oh boy.
Come feel the sparkling breeze.
It's the
I
way he
love
plays the trumpet after each
No.
single attempt, and then the three Santas join in, and the other mini Naotomi, as he calls himself, also plays the trumpet and even cries with him. It's so funny.
I love it.
I
Oh,
I
it's so
do love
good.
that. I love that detail at the end though, when he's just like sliding across the screen and he's just crying. That makes me laugh.
Oh, for sure.
So
Poor
funny.
guy. It's also like, isn't that just so classic? Is Naozumi's like, I'm so excited to like have a day alone with Sana where we can like share this thing that makes us closer. And Sana, about 15 minutes into it, is like, I think we should bring in the rest of the cast. And makes her right. Though to be fair, she doesn't know that Tsuyoshi and Hayama are coming as well, but it did tickle me
Yeah, they just
nonetheless.
kind of hopped into the car and were like, "Let's go. We got nothing
Yeah,
better to do."
pretty
That
much.
was so hilarious. They're like, "Oh, I see Santa's manager. Let me just hop into the car and see where this adventure will take me for the
Truly, this is a trusted adult. And also,
day."
too, like just all the things that Sana asked him to pack in the trunk and stuff has tickled me. The bungee cord and all of that.
It
Oh,
was
sweet
like going
Sana.
back to that episode back again. She's literally applying every single one of Akito's attempts into this
Mm-hmm.
little boy, and it's like a refresher. So if you're like going back and forth into the anime, you can tell like, oh boy, this
Mm-hmm.
is what happened with this boy and made him better. And then Akito just showing up and like going directly with this little boy and telling him, tell her what you want to say. Is what tells you that he knows that the kid is just like him.
Mm-hmm. which I liked that a lot, because it was very clear that, and I think when I used to work with like little kids, kind of until I worked in a preschool, so kind of, and I had infants through probably age 3 or 4. And it is kind of interesting how sometimes when a kid wants your attention the most, that is when they'll start like physically or sometimes just like emotionally, like they push you away. Even though like the thing that they want, because they don't know how to ask for it, for attention, I think, at those in those stages. So they find other tactics, other ways of getting that attention. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting note on the child, um, in this episode.
That's a good quote. I actually hadn't like thought about it so thoroughly. So I thought he was just like a little bit different because all the other kids have their own way of being. But him is just
Hmm.
like but he was blushing though. At first when he first saw her, he was blushing. So I
Hmm.
figured that he was just trying to like show her something or like maybe try
Hmm.
to approach her, but he didn't know how to.
Yeah, I remember I had this kiddo once who was probably 2, maybe a little younger, like walking and kind of like babbling, but not really talking yet. And and I can't remember what happened, if this boy like hit another child or something, but I was like trying, kind of got on his level and was trying to kind of keep him from, this tantrum that he was having. And he's, kind of beating his tiny baby fists on me. And I'm, kind of trying to grab his fists so that I can like keep him from hitting me. And one of my coworkers, who is a mom, probably in her 40s or 50s, and she's like, hug him. She's like, and I'm like, but he's like, like he's hitting me, like, he's hitting other kids. Like this is not a time for, and she's like, yeah, she's like, but like he keeps reaching for you. Like he needs that right now. And I didn't really get it, but I sort of like, just sort of scooped him up. And sure enough, within a couple of minutes, he had kind of calmed down and was no longer raging and crying and deeply upset anymore. And sometimes how, they are presenting is not necessarily they're not trying to be bad, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It was an interesting
Yeah,
and kind of formative experience for me. I was probably 20 at the time.
Sometimes all it takes is a hug. Hugs are nice,
Truly,
though.
he
it's
needed
pretty
comfort.
sweet.
And so I was thinking of that kid a lot while I was watching that episode today. Asana's going toe to toe with him, but maybe all he really wanted or needed was just like a moment.
Yeah, and I believe Sana says something like that when she first sees him too, which is like, I
Hmm.
know someone like you. And she then talks to someone and says, you have to show these kids, like, you have to win over them so that you can show them that they're not all that, so they can calm down and become more humble. Kind of what she
Hmm.
was trying to say. Because she was comparing this little boy to Akito all the day. So she's like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna do the same thing I did to Akito so that this boy gets level headed just like Akito did.
And they're similar, but they're not identical. So in the end, they needed something a little different. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Hmm.
Um,
Definitely.
and I loved the reveal at the end of what Koji had planned for her on the beach. I thought that was really sweet.
It was. I liked the little
It
joke
was
in the
so
English
cute.
dub too.
Yeah, welcome ho. Um,
I was surprised it was different in the Japanese version. It was just,
yeah,
well,
yeah, or probably I think it was Yoko, and then just didn't get to Yokoso.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely what it was. 'Cause Akito was saying
mhm.
it out loud, Yoko, and then Sana stopped and ko, and then they say Yoko so. And that was so sweet. But I didn't know in the English stuff they made it like that.
Yeah, they did welcome, and then they had it cut off in home, so it's a welcome ho, which was
Oh boy.
I was like, oh, you made a slightly different joke. I don't know if they were like intending to make that joke, but they kind of did. So,
That's kind of hilarious.
whoops. Uh,
welcome ho. Welcome home, Asana.
I liked it too. I did another little uh sub versus dub. moment, Japanese versus English moment, is Tsuyoshi and Rei are kind of reflecting on everything that's happened that day. And in the Japanese version, Tsuyoshi says, "Oh, Koji is so much more well-mannered than Akito." And Akito's like, "Oh, shut up." And then in the English version, they're like, "Oh, Koji is like I think just as sweet on Sana or something like that." Which I thought was a bit more changing the meaning, which I thought was
Mhm.
interesting.
Okay, that's funny. Because that translation was the exact same translation I read. I actually watched the episode with Spanish dubs, and in the Spanish dub, it also said that Koji was sweeter than Akito was. So that's kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So I am curious about, so for the Spanish version, did that have a home video release? Like, do you have DVDs for that or Blu-rays, or do you watch it online? I'm
No,
just curious.
unfortunately, the only way you can access it is online on not so many label sites, unfortunately. But they
Mm.
do have the Spanish version of the manga published in Spain. Like the full 10 volumes are available in Spanish, but they are so limited that it's very, very hard to find.
Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but I mean the English version of it also is kind of hard to find because it's out of print now, and you see how crazy the
Mhm.
prices are. But
Oh my
still,
God.
I will say, yeah, it's kind of similar.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. I don't know. Oh, to be Italy, where yeah, I feel like they've got multiple printings going at all times, but one day we'll get a reprint in English, and I hope that there's a reprint in Spanish someday. Because it's
Hopefully, hopefully.
fingers crossed. Because yeah, no, the English
Yes.
volumes. I don't know about you guys. I do know about you guys because you guys are also like me and on Mercari and eBay and all over the internet looking at Kodocha merch all the time. Some
Yes, every day. I hate to admit it.
Every single day. I hate
same.
it.
Yeah, same. So like but some of the manga prices lately have just been in, and actually not even so much the manga, but I've been seeing like lots of like copies of the Funimation DVDs, and people are charging like an arm and a leg for them. And I'm just,
Literally,
it seems crazy to me. I'm like, friends, there's nobody's gonna pay that when you can buy the Blu-rays for like half of what you're charging for a couple of the DVDs. Like, what are you talking about? This is insane.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's just like, oh, well, this is an old collectible item now. I guess that's their logic, but still, I
I
wouldn't pay that
know.
much for it. I just
I wouldn't.
I just sit and wait around until I find it for a price I want to pay, and then I get it.
Pretty much. That is the thing, I think, with merch generally is just being patient. I have a hard time with it because I feel like, especially for something like Kodocha, which is 30 years old now and, out of print and out of stock everywhere all of the time, there's this like sense of urgency and this kind of feeling of scarcity. And so it's really hard to be patient sometimes and just be like, another one will pop up, you know?
hmm
So it's just being patient, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. I haven't really had the funds to get anything new lately, and I've been just really doing a deep dive like on the proxy sites too, and it's like there's so many things I want to have, but it's just impossible to afford.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
that's without the shipping, because international shipping also it's so
Mm-hmm.
That's
high.
awful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. I've been trying, I think the other thing too for me is like trying to figure out like what collectible things like I want, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
hmm
'Cause like it's so tempting every time like I'll see something with that like at a great price or, but then it's like, do I actually like I'm not a person who collects figurines. But every time I see one of the Sana figurines, like or the dolls or things like that, I'm like, ooh, do I need that? And the answer is no. I do not need that.
Right.
I don't collect dolls. And it's a slippery slope because if I start collecting
hmm
dolls, like, oh, it's on. Like, so I've got to like, remind myself I try to keep it to paper goods, Furoku, things like that, but it's hard.
Even
The
more
light
when they're so
novels.
cute.
I
They even
know.
have the little collectible houses, the little collectible dresses and shoes, the bags. It's
Mm,
too much. I have
I
seen this
know.
necklace that has Santa face on it, and it comes in a box. The box is so adorable in itself, but I keep looking at it and I'm like, where am I going to put this? There's no
Hmm.
space in my collection, and if I hang it around somewhere, I'm going to lose it 100%.
That's definitely fair. It's like, what do you have space for? Yeah, what's a good use of your precious dollars that you have set aside for collectibles? It's tough.
It really is.
I really
Well,
wish there was more gadgets that would pop up on
mm,
Mercari and
hmm
eBay because I see the camera a lot and
yeah.
I see the drumsticks mm, probably the second most, but
hmm
like you never see the barucha or you never see the walkie-talkie or not the walkie-talkie, the yak back. You never see
hmm
any of those. I think I saw the keyboard once,
Yeah.
but
The
it's just never on
personality
there.
tester is I've seen the personality tester a couple of times and I've put in a couple of bids on it on eBay and didn't get it. There's one on Mercari right now for like $145, which is just a little more than I'm
That's
personally willing to spend.
Yeah, that's a crazy price.
I
I got lucky
agree.
and I got one a couple years ago for under $100. So it's like that's a
Oh,
steal.
nice. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just looked at this
Yeah.
$145 one. It's also got $34 in delivery fees. So it's like
Oh
170
man.
plus dollars personality tester, but it's fine. We're fine. Anyway, to be a Kodocha fan. This is a life we've chosen. Any other thoughts about the anime? The episode? I wanted to, I've got a couple of things about the manga, but didn't want to move on unless.
I didn't have anything. Did you, Lee?
Wait, I think that's pretty much it so far. Because we cover most of the fun stuff, most of the sentimental stuff, and then we cover the cute moments. But if you guys had to choose, throughout the whole episode, which will be the best moment, like your ultimate favorite
Mm,
moment?
ooh. Honestly, I think for me, it's probably the come feel the sparkling breeze Naozumi moment, because that just had me laughing. How about you guys?
I definitely liked the moment when they were talking about when Nazumi was little and he gets so inspired by Sana and then she's like, I heard you were a crybaby. I
I
That's
like
love
that
such a
it.
moment the
cute moment.
best.
A
It's
hundred
so good.
percent. Guys had me struggling with this too. Uh, but mine, I have to say, because it was the one that like had me thinking through the whole episode, was the car ride when they were talking, and
Mm,
then Sana was like, "How do I thank him?" And then the way, because he was looking at her throughout
hmm
the whole car ride, whether to
Yeah.
make sure that she was okay or just to be looking at her. It was like I had to go back and watch this little part, and I rewind and I rewind. She was so adorable. So definitely the
Yeah.
car ride for me.
That's a good one. It's a good moment. Yeah. So the equivalent in the manga is like what? One, two, three, four, five, six, like maybe 7, 8 pages. In the
Yeah,
chapter.
it's
It's
super
it's
short.
it's super short. But this is something that I love when the anime does this. I love when they take these moments from the manga and kind of spin them into, more expanding on the world. And I think that this episode does a
Hmm.
great job of that. But
Hmm.
um
I
I
agree.
do I do love the art also. I just every time I, spend a lot of time with the manga, I just am so in awe of Obana. I love it.
Same. Yeah,
Definitely.
it always just touches me in a different way every time I read it. And I feel like that's something very special that not a lot of series can really do.
I agree.
A hundred
I love it.
percent. And though it's pretty short, like the anime expands on it with the three sanas, the funny moments, because we don't have this on the manga. The kids are more
Mhm.
calm. The interaction is more formal. And you see Sana being like goofy and stuff, but she's more, how to say, more composed than she would usually be because she's listening carefully to the mother in here. Her hands on her cheeks, looking around. And then this side, when Naotomi tries to confess, it's the kids that are like, play the
Yes.
trumpet now, Chan. And it's like he's so cute because you can see the way that they treat him like, oh, this is my brother. This is something we do every day. Yeah, he's gonna play the trumpet for us. I don't care what he's doing. Let me just get in between
I loved that too. And I was kind of taken aback a little bit in the English Tokyo Pop translation, that they put it, as him saying, I have feelings for you, like really explicitly like that. That was pretty wild to me. So
Hmm.
I've
I
just
thought
now
so
grabbed
too, actually.
I'm grabbing my
it.
Japanese copy because I feel like yeah. No, he doesn't get as far as saying that in the Japanese version. He says basically like, please don't think of me as your brother. And then he says like he's starting to say like, oh, boku wa sana-chan, and then he gets cut off. So it doesn't get as far as him actually saying I have feelings for you. So that's an interesting little translation note as well.
It's
Don't
almost
Definitely.
rush
like
him, Tokyo
it's
Pop.
almost
Don't
like
rush
in
him.
yeah, it's almost like in they think that we can't this or us English readers can't read between the lines.
Truly. On ellipses can say so much. Like, yeah, they can just have left it with the, Sana, and it would have been fine, I think. So,
Hmm.
Yeah.
but they
Because after that,
didn't.
if you read it, like when you read that, you're waiting for a response, like a reaction from
Exactly.
Sana. Because
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
you don't see any kind of reaction. She's just smiling in the next panel, like this pretty smile when she's saying thanks for like I'm glad I could come to the institution. Like make it make sense. The translation here is just straight up okay.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, there's no way the Sana wouldn't react to that, especially when we have like scenes later in the series where, once she is actually like confronted with like baby's first love confession, she really doesn't know how to respond, and kind of panics a little bit. So it seemed kind of weird. It's weird for Naozumi to say that and there to be no response. Ergo, translation
Definitely.
shenanigan. Uh, as always. Any other thoughts on the manga from anybody? Any panels in particular that you really like?
Hmm.
Mm,
I mean, I love the whole little sequence, honestly.
Mhm.
yeah.
Um,
It's so
there's
short.
Yeah, short and sweet. Honestly, I really like Sana's fit in the manga here with the little
Yes.
little braids and stuff. Very cute. I love
and
her
then after
Definitely.
hairstyles.
and then after that, it's like they skip pretty far into the future if you're taking the anime into account. Like when I go over to the next page, they have like a whole thing of filler, I think, in
Hmm.
between that and what happens after that, finding out about the middle birthday.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Mm,
basically episodes 21. This is episode 21, and then Christmas Kiss is what, 38? And so that's
Yeah,
like,
it's a big gap.
yeah.
definitely a big
And
graph.
and I think these are technically in the same chapter too. So the Camera Academy stuff, middle birthday, and then yeah, then we dive right into the party and
Mm-hmm.
Akito looks like he's going to confess. We don't get as far as the actual kiss, but we have some dot dot dots. Oh, bless. Oh, my heart can't take it. Oh, thump thump. Um,
It's so
so,
adorable. But gap related, when I was looking for the manga episode on the camera, it
mhm,
took me so long to find it because of that. Because in the anime it's episode 21, and then you
mhm,
don't get the Christmas in after all these fillers. So when I'm looking through the manga, I'm going chapter by chapter. I'm skipping through so quickly, and I'm like,
mhm,
I see the end of each chapter, and I'm like, oh, this is the Christmas key, so definitely before this. Then I go back, I don't see it. I go further back, I don't see it, and then I go up again, and I have to go slower because it's the manga goes so much faster compared to the anime, so it's so much harder to locate things in itself.
Hmm.
mhm.
I felt that way too back when I first read the manga, and it was like, wait, what? We're already here.
Oh, for sure.
Especially with the middle school. Like that
Oh,
happened so
yeah.
fast when I like read the manga for
Yes.
the first time.
Honestly, yeah, I was gonna say, because if we're, and I think I've talked about this a little bit before too, but like if we're talking like calendar year, so it's probably the events of like the first few episodes, first few chapters are probably in like April, May. You know, they do have a brief summer break, which is when Sana films that initial commercial with Naozumi. And then they come back for the fall. It's still sixth grade. We basically zip from like this, which is probably like September, October-ish. We kind of breeze over Akito's birthday to Christmas Eve. And then basically right after that, we skip the rest of the school year. So we don't really touch January, February, or most of March. And then it's junior high. Whereas then once we get to junior high, the time starts going quite a bit slower, since everything happens over the course of that year. Um,
Hmm.
March to December. So
It's a big
um,
gap, actually.
it is, especially when you think about like, so Akito and Sana go on their first date and 1 year exactly after the Christmas Eve kiss. Um,
Wow.
so everything that happens with Fuka and like the filming in the mountains and technically the entire New York arc all happens like in between March and December, which is pretty crazy.
It is. I actually never thought about that gap before.
Oh,
That's a pretty interesting observation.
it was when I was working on my Akito fan fiction and where I was
Oh.
thinking a lot about that timeline, and I'm a nut for dates. So I like kind of tried to put it all out in like what month these events were happening. And I realized how much, one, how quickly the elementary school arc is told, if that makes sense. Like that story is kind of told and wrapped up somewhat quickly, and how much
Hmm.
slower the junior high arc is by comparison. Because, yeah, they're moved to Los Angeles by January of the following year. So speedy, speedy.
It's crazy. Imagine if like things happen to you that fast, like within like a year and a half, 2 years. I know
I mean,
things happen, but like I just mean that's a lot
it,
when you think about what happens to
It
them.
is.
it definitely is, but I don't think it's, I mean, if we're talking, I don't know, like, and a lot does happen to them in a relatively short space of time, but in some ways, I'm kind of like, that's like the craziness of life, right? Like, if I think about the last 2 years of my life, a year ago, I was living in a different city in Texas, in a completely different housing situation. Like, my husband was unemployed. Like, it just like so many things have changed in the last year. So,
Maybe it's
just
because I had a very uneventful last few years.
Yeah, it's like
honest.
those normal days. Like sometimes your routine becomes very repetitive. So I
Mhm.
guess that it even happens in the manga and anime too. Like you're doing the same routine. So instead of giving you this same monotone routine every day, what about if I give you the exciting things that happen instead of just
Mhm.
copy paste? Let me get straight to the point, which is what I feel may have happened here in
Mm.
these gaps that we're filling that went missing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also too, I mean, like don't get me wrong, like I love a slice of life series where they really do kind of take things kind of day by day. But sometimes it can be sort of like, yeah, like especially for shoujo series, characters are typically in school. It's like, yeah, they woke up, they made breakfast, they went to school. They had conversations with their friends. They had thoughts about those conversations with their friends. They came home, and did their homework. And that's sort of, and I think for Kadocha, it's like, okay, so like Sana is late for school. Sana has child's toy taping after school, probably some shenanigans, but like, what else is there to say, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. I feel like most likely that's what they try to cover, but at the same time, leave it like I'm gonna leave it up to the imagination, and then I'm gonna just present to you the parts that stand out the most.
I think that makes sense. And I
For
think
sure.
too, If I had to guess, I'd say probably Obana was just like ready to move them along a little bit, both in their relationship. She already had the middle birthday thing planned, and then was kind of just excited to get into the junior high stuff where things could be a little bit more serious. So,
Just
you
from what
know,
I've read of her other works, I think that's kind of how she is. Like she seems to spend less amount of time like she spends like she puts a lot of effort into the structure and the building blocks for her world and her characters, but she doesn't overdo it. And it seems like she kind of gets straight into the gritty stuff pretty early on. It's just something I've noticed with from what I've read from Honey Bitter and her other manga partner. She doesn't really she doesn't really play around. She gets to the point pretty quickly, which I personally like how she does that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not really a big fan of slice of life. Like I can appreciate it for what it is, but as someone who wants to watch something or read a manga, that's just not what gives me any kind of fulfillment. So I do appreciate that kind of writing style from her.
oh, for sure. Yeah, for me, like, I will say sometimes, especially in the early days of a slice of life, like that can be really tough. It can feel a little repetitive. It can feel difficult, but sometimes those early chapters or episodes are like a little difficult to get through. But I will say, like some of the more slice of life series that I've kind of experienced, the payoff though is so good because I do think that there are certain kinds of development that it's just a different approach, but the characters can be developed also really well in that method, and I've certainly not regretted it at the end of any of those series. So, but that's just me. But no, Obana is perfect, and wish that we had access to more of her works because she's quite a lady.
Yeah, I honestly like I've thought about just having getting the Japanese manga just to have on my shelf, even though I can't read it really. I can just look at the artwork, but yeah, I really wish that they'd bring more of her stories over here because she's a fantastic writer.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, agreed.
I just feel like her stories always have a message or a plot to it that makes you
Mm.
think or like consider things like it makes you view a specific topics in a different way. It definitely did for me when I first started seeing Kodacha because Sana's Sana's thoughts, the way she handles situationships and the way she just overall her personality shines through, it's so different from many of the other stories that I have read or seen.
Hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. And the message is always really good. So, we could talk about that all day, though.
Definitely. And the
Definitely.
dark themes that she adds in the manga, the way that this boy went to the forest and said, "Hey, Akito, if you don't come to the forest, this is gonna happen." Like, that was so deep. I had never expected something like that to happen.
Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, truly, right? It was a shift. Like maybe not like a huge shift in tone, but that is definitely when things got real with a capital R.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
well, anything we want to add about the Camera Academy visit?
I didn't have anything else. Did you, Lee?
I just think it's a pretty lovely episode. Like, I
Mm.
like the fact that it was expanded throughout more in the anime than it was in the manga. Though
Mhm.
I feel like they really tried to implement the other characters in almost every single situation Sana is in. Because the idea of having a mini Akito in this anime too was like, okay, interesting. I feel like it's quite a good refresher, but I actually was expecting it more to be like only Kamura related, you know, like
Mm.
this is Sana meeting the people that took care of her when she was a baby, and then she's meeting the kids from there. She's seeing her history. She's getting to know more about Naosumi. She gets to know that he got inspired to become an actor because of her. So I was like, okay, give me more of that. Give me only this. Focus on this for this single episode. Because in the manga, it's like that. It's short, most likely because of that. Because it only focuses on this specific part and then bye. But in the anime, they somehow implement Akito into the story too. So it shifts this from Sana meeting the people in the Camera Academy to Sana dealing with Akito all over again. So I was a little bit disappointed compared to the manga, to be honest, because I was expecting to be more, okay, Kamura Academy, Kamura no Osumi, you know what I mean? But it was pretty funny. It was so funny that I can't even complain as much about it.
That's fair. I think, by kind of distracting Sana with an alternative goal, I guess, for the episode, it kind of did take away a little bit from those tender moments. But the comedy, and that is typically where the anime puts its energy and focus. So I get it though.
It's so funny. Like, I love the episode. It's so funny and lighthearted. And then at the end, she said, "I'm gonna quit my job," and I'm like, Sana, we were laughing 3 seconds ago. What happened here? It's just like a realization check on how funny and how serious this story is overall.
Though I do have to say, I do not love the way that whenever there's a lull in the series, or whenever they're working on, needing some filler, that one of their kind of tired, I think, plot points is the Sana's gonna quit acting. I'm like, I'm so tired.
Or she gets fired, or she gets
fired or blacklisted or something. I'm just like, oh, come on. Y'all are killing me. But in any case, anything else to add before we wrap it on up?
I didn't have anything.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thank you so much again for coming, Lee. This has been really, really fun. You're a dear friend and a delightful person, and we're both so happy to know you and get to call you our friend. So thank you for joining us and getting to talk a little bit about our show again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys too. This has been so much fun. I don't often get to talk about this kind of episodes, characters, or Kodocha overall. So whenever I have the chance to just talk about these things, laugh about it, or comment on things that I didn't know about before, like, you guys always teach me something new whenever we're having these conversations. I literally had no idea about the implementations that the English dub had made. So it's just so funny. So thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I feel the same about you. I feel like the three of us, because we're all so deep into Kodocha, but in with slightly different focuses, we all have information that the others don't have. And so it's really nice to kind of get to come together. And I definitely feel also that I learn a lot from you whenever you're here. Your perspective is very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. Makes me happy.
Not lying. Very sincere. All right, then. I don't think there's any housekeeping or anything. We're kind of back on our schedule. Now that the summer is over, drop a application in if you'd like to guest on 19 O'Clock News, a Kodocha podcast. Anything else, Ari?
Yeah, I'd like to mention Lee has a very prolific Pinterest page with screenshots and more from Kodocha. Definitely check that out. She's also on other socials, which we'll link in the description below.
Absolutely. Yes. Always, always, always. Her resources are everything. So, well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. See ya. Bye. Don't forget to listen and subscribe to the Kodocha podcast.
Oh, you sweet angel baby. Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to 19 O'Clock News, a Kodocha podcast.
19 O'Clock News is hosted by That Kodocha Girl and Mahou Shoujo M.
We love making new friends. Feel free to join us in the Kodocha Discord under Kodocha_media.
19 O'Clock News is not affiliated with any current or previous rights holders to Kodomo no Omocha by Miho Obana.